Hello, good evening, Rich. Can you hear me? Rich, can you hear me at all? Sorry, I mean people in the room. Can you hear me?
that respect. Elkins delivered this work across various other parts of their organisation, and so we've done our due diligence there with procurement colleagues. As this is a six month, potentially slightly longer, not a 5-year contract, which is what we bid for, not to originally. As I say, it's different. One of the tangible benefits to having Elkins doing this work for us is the fact that they are here. They're already set up with the City Island Corporation systems. And so in terms of mobilisation, there's a lot less work to do than there would be if there was an external third-party contractor that came in to deliver that for us just for that 6 to 9 month period. So yeah, I take the point, but hopefully I've answered your question.
Can I just clarify then? Will Elkins be sticking to the prices that were agreed with Chigwell, or are we now on a different pricing regime?
So the base of the contract and the contract itself is being transferred as a whole. We were already in discussions with Chigwell over various pricing models, which was part of the reason they cited for leaving. But what's being transferred is the contract as it was when it was with Chigwell, which includes the pricing documents.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I just one further question? Did the prices that Chigwell put in for the contracts in the Barbican, were they significantly above the prices they put in for the housing revenue estates where they remain as the main contractor?
I'd have to take that away and come back to the committee at the next meeting.
But I remain very curious why Chigwell walked away in less than 3 months. I've never heard a convincing explanation of that. Our request for an independent inquiry has been ignored. I remain mystified, and I really do think we need to get to the bottom of it. When I look at the contract matrix, there are an awful lot of new contracts to be awarded over the next 2 years. I think we need to understand clearly what went wrong with such a major contract before we move on. And at the moment, I and any resident I speak to remains absolutely confused about this. We don't understand it. And currently, it doesn't look like we're about to understand it.
Yeah, Jim, we did give the commitment that we were going to do that independent review, and we did state within that commitment that first of all, our immediate priority was going to be demobilising Chigwell or mobilising Elkins. We're still committed to doing that review. I'm not sure what that would yield. We as officers are, mystified as to why Chigwell didn't want to continue that relationship with us as well, because we proved within our document that we brought back to this committee that the financial reasons they were citing were not correct, and we proved that through the documents that we gave this committee. So we're happy to do that review. I think we would like answers on this side of the table, but at the moment, we don't have that answer. It's not something that we can give you. A commercial third party has made a decision that they didn't want to continue the arrangement. They cited financial concerns. That's all the information I have. I don't have an answer, behind a door somewhere. There is no information that we're trying to hide. And as I've said, once we've got this demobilisation underway and the mobilisation of Elkins sorted, absolutely we can do that review. And if it yields any lessons learned, then we'll of course bring them back and we can publicise that.
Thank you, John. Direct.
I don't want to interrupt the flow if there are any more questions on the transition, but within item 5 there are some other things like the major programmes work. So if it's appropriate, I'd like to ask a question about that if we finished on the other aspects.
Out of interest, the contracts that Chigwell got vis-a-vis the other part of the estate, has there been any pushback from them? Has there been any request to renegotiate the agreed tender pricing?
Again, I'd have to go back to my colleagues in housing. I'm not close to that contract. It's a separately run contract. If this committee would like to ask that question, I can take it away and ask my housing colleagues. It would be inappropriate of me to speculate with limited information at the moment.
Peter Reid, Willoughby, apologies.
That was just what I was going to remind people. Sandy.
Sandy Wilson, Shakespeare. Yeah, Dan, I'd like to say it's good to see a multi-year programme spreadsheet. in the report. I was a little confused by some of what I read in it, in that, for example, we have an estimated cost of a sort of escalated estimated cost and a recoverable cost. And the figures which appear in the annual.
Sorry, Sandy, we're still doing repairs and maintenance. And I think
I thought we were under item 5, which is what I said at the start. This is.
Sorry, no, I think we're still on 4, aren't we?
Are we?
Yes.
My
sorry.
apologies.
Yeah, mine too. I didn't quite spot.
Fine. Okay.
Have we got any other questions on item 4, the repairs and maintenance? No. Great. Thank you.
Moving on to item 5, report of major works programme boards. This item is for information on pages 21 to 36.
Thank you, town clerks. And sorry to cut across, Sandy. My opportunity to introduce the paper before we go into Q&A. So members will be aware that we made a commitment at the start of this calendar year that we were going to get 3 key documents to this committee and publicised to our leaseholders. Just for a reminder, they were the Planned Preventative Maintenance Programme. This is a programme of all assets that are across the estate, which contractors are currently maintaining those assets, at what frequency, and obviously at what cost. The second was a contracts matrix that sits behind the Planned Preventative Maintenance Programme, and that informs the procurement timelines, when we need to extend contracts, when we need to renew contracts. And the third then is what Sandy was referring to, is the capital expenditure plan. And that is a timeline of mapped capital expenditure costs for the estate. So things like roofing projects, lift replacements, all the big capital stuff that we have across the estate. The reason that is so important is because as a local authority, we are not allowed to collect a reserve fund. And so this document in the hands of leaseholders acts as a cost mapping tool for you individually to be able to see where the particular pinch points are going to come when we talk about major projects, but also for officers to be able to ensure that we're mapping those projects against the life cycle of our assets. So these are 3 documents that we're delivering. They are a work in progress. They are not final. We have a lot of work to do and have done with the Major Works Programme Board. Notably, with the capital expenditure plan, we will be delivering a plan with a tab for each individual block, so you can see that mapped over the next few months. That's a key part of this exercise for us. And just then, in the summary report that I've given you all, there is also a note of a compliance matrix. That compliance matrix hasn't come to this committee for review because it's not quite a customer-facing document yet. It did go to the Major Works Programme Board and was discussed, and we had feedback. But there's a few bits we need to do before we bring that back to this committee in February. So this is a real key step. I'd like to thank officers, particularly Owen Doyle, Will Simpson, and Dan Castle, for supporting and getting these documents, prepared and reviewed a few times now. As I say, they're not final, but the fact that they're here, they're substantial, and they're the building blocks for the ongoing maintenance and renewal programmes of this estate. And now I'm happy to accept questions, for which I'm sure Sandy would like to go first.
Yes, if I could continue where I rudely interrupted before. Yeah, I would like some explanation as to what the 3 financial columns are. The estimated, inflated, estimated and recoverable. That would be useful to know. I also note that the numbers which appear in the annual part are really the estimated, nothing else. So it's just to try and start to understand what I'm looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. So the estimated cost is estimated project cost as it would stand today. The estimated cost with inflation is obviously if the project was to happen in 5 years' time, you adjust that for inflation, and the recoverable cost is what we would use as what's recoverable from leaseholders. So is that a service charge cost, or is that a landlord cost, or otherwise? There are some projects that we have where other people get involved, such as the Barbican Centre potentially. So it's all around that. One of the things I think we have certainly taken on board, and in future iterations will be considerate of, if some of the language used in these documents is probably still quite jargonistic and not perhaps hitting the average leaseholder, because there's quite a lot of terminology in here that unless you're really in it, you might not necessarily understand. But as I say, yeah, these are the drafts that we've got. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, well, I had another aspect to this. The lift program, which is down for the 3 towers, goes on for 6 years in this, which is a nice spread of money, but it's a bit long for the lift program, we think. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that obviously, we put it in this document for that because of the cost spreading and what it looks like across this. However, this document is very malleable. It's always going to be updated, and I know that the Lift Tower Working Group, Sandy, which you're part of, have been meeting with Will and Owen, and those meetings at that level will obviously continue to inform these sheets. And so, for example, if a decision was taken that project was going to be done in a shorter period of time, that would be documented through the minutes and through consultation, and then updated to reflect this. So, it is a working document that sets out a basis, but it isn't set in stone. And there are obviously ongoing conversations, such as the one you've pointed out, that will continue to inform it over time. It's something that we will continually update every year. It has to be a live document. We don't ever get to year 11 and then go, oh, what do we do in year 12? It's continually reviewed and updated, and it becomes a live working piece.
Okay, I have one other question. It may not, since I'm not doing very well at timing tonight, it may not be appropriate to ask it here, but it's about the fire door project. So is that something we should discuss now, or?
Project tracker stuff.
Okay. It's a long time since the fire door project sort of was raised, and one of the aspects of it was the design of the doors and how mail was delivered to the apartments. And I can remember sending a note to the city who were running the project at the time saying, the folks in Shakespeare do not want to pick their mail up from a box at the side of the flat, outside the confines of the flat. And we haven't heard anything about that since. And also we're due to see at some point in the programme a mock-up. And I think everybody's very keen to get some feel for the dates for that. So one, are we still on target for delivery of mail into the flats? And secondly, will we see a mock-up at some point? And when do you think that would be? Because it wasn't obvious to me in the wording whether it happened during the design phase or after the design phase.
So one links directly to the other, so it's very helpful. So the reason that it's taken longer than anticipated, or a big part of the reason, is because we have introduced those letterboxes into the testing of the door sets for the towers. And as such, they are in the final stages of testing. I think in an iteration of a paper I bought a few RTCs ago, I actually listed all the tests that there are. And obviously, as we've made that amendment with the letterbox, it's had to go back through some of those testing regimes. I don't have a date sat here now for when we will have the mock-up, but it will be minuted by the town clerk, and for the next meeting, we'll do our best endeavour. So if not an exact date, at least a quarter for the year that is coming.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
David Lawrence, Lauderdale Tower. I looked at the schedule, the major work schedule, and my first thought is the resourcing actually set up behind this in terms of thinking about capacity and bearing in mind the number of programs going on, the capacity of the management team to deal with it all?
It's a really good question. It's something that we're reviewing at the back end as well. When we come up with the block by block iteration, it may be that we discover that at certain points there are going to be, various projects ongoing. We have Will and Owen, but they are only 2 people. And obviously we need to continually review that resourcing. And what you'll see in the paper that we've bought with the organisational chart is that we'll continue to review that annually, and that will be in conjunction with the things that we have coming up. At the moment, we have the appropriate resource for what we're doing now, but obviously when we look at things like this, it's ever changing. We have things like legislation that can also change our resourcing with things coming in, but as it stands now, we're happy with our level of resourcing.
That leads on to my second question. They're all related. Have you started thinking through the critical path of related work programs? Just take a simple example of fire doors being delivered when the lifts arrive in the tower blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. We have started doing that. Our project interdependencies in this are really important, and what you'll see is the beauty of these three documents is that they talk to each other. Iteration in the future, that will really come to life, because what you'll be able to see are things like, we don't want to go into renewing a massive lift contract per se when we're just about to replace all the lifts, because that would be a project interdependency. Or in a bricks and mortar sense, like you're saying, you don't want to do carpet redecoration on the top floor when you're just about to replace all the roofs, and you could be exposing issues there. So absolutely, critical pathways will be mapped out in the document in the future.
And that will be monitored by the Major Works Project Board.
Correct.
So the final question is, if I recall properly on things like the Savills report, there was a fair amount of ancillary work required in various rooms around the organisation. I think mainly relating to electrical works and perhaps even substation works. Have you yet thought about these and included them in a programme, or are they actually things which are yet to be mapped out?
No, we have, and we've done quite a lot of work on things from that report, such as landlord electrical testing. We did quite a lot of activity in that last year. Those Savills reports and various other reports from across the years here at the Barbican Estate Office have created the foundation to create these documents. We gave a very strong commitment when we set out to do this work that previous reports and things that the service charge payers, or indeed the city, may have paid for would not just be thrown out, and that they would be a strong foundation to build upon these documents that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tam Pollard, Chair, Asset Maintenance Working Party, still Major Works Programme Board. It's really positive that we've got a PPM plan for medicine maintenance schedule now. I think it's something that as residents we've keenly felt the absence of over recent years, and we see it in all sorts of problems we've had. So it's good that we now have that. What diligence has been done by yourselves to make sure that what is on there is now comprehensive and there's nothing missing? Because obviously as residents we can look at it and it looks very good, but we don't necessarily know what isn't there. So what assurance do we have that there isn't any gap?
Thanks, Tam. So from all the documentations that we've had, like the Savills report and things we've built upon, that's obviously formed a basis of what we're doing. We have a good skill set and knowledge set within the BEO that knows these buildings very well as well. So we are confident that this is encompassing of the assets that we have on the estate. However, the Barbican is unique. Not everything we do is perfect, and one of the things that we would like to do is get this probed by an external CAFM department next year, and because we've exhausted most of the back end, so the drawings and the schematics we have, etc., we'll give them to those people as a backup. But really what we're looking to do is send competent CAFM people out on the estate with keys and to be guided, and say, go and poke around, and if you find anything that's not on our list, let us know.
And CAFM, for those of us who don't know the jargon?
It's facilities management expression. So yeah, it's capital expenditure facilities management.
That's really helpful, thank you.
Someone says it's Andy Hope. No.
I just had a quick one to extend Sandy's question around the fire doors project, actually, and the scope. I think our house chair has discovered that for many people on this estate who've got electricity meter panels, that the original asbestos panel is not going to be removed as a part of that project. Is that actually the case? And if so, can you let us know why?
So the remit of the project that we have at the moment is that the fire doors to the apartments and the doors of those units are going to be replaced, but not the asbestos-backed things themselves. Now, I have had a few people come back to me and say that they believe that that might not be the commitment, and so we've said that we'll go back and check previous iterations of what the City of London has said. As it stands today, the remit that that we have and that the project team have been given is the doors themselves on those units.
So Andrew Tong has got his hand up.
Thank you. I don't know whether I can see that we are being presented the direction of this topic, but to what extent can we make comment and questions about what's within the matrices and checklists? Well, I'll go ahead and mention it. I'll be happy if these are just bookmarks to be reviewed in other iterations. On page 31 in the tracker, one comment and a question. The comment is the canopy study funding. It says service charge, wasn't decided that is city funded? And secondly, a question. In terms of program, the next step seems to be there'll be presentation to a new Brandon Muse board. We haven't heard of this board before. As I said, if it's not intended to be discussed at this meeting, let's follow at some point. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. You may have missed it, but Joe did mention for the minutes your comment around the canopy's existence being to cover a defect on the roof in the first place. So I think that's covered in there, and I've starred that as well. And I think when it says Brandon Muse Board, I think it just means it's a between the Major Works Programme Board and Brandon Muse leaseholders. But that's a joint meeting that you'll shortly be getting an invite for with Avanti, who are going to come and present the feasibility study to us. So I'll tidy that up, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of points. The first one is on the PPM. At some point, one of the working parties needs to sort of go in and decide how those costs are going to get allocated to the service charge. Picking up a point David Lawrence made last time, is we have towers who are obviously going to have high lift but low roof and vice versa. So the allocations need to really be as specific as possible. So I just wanted to make the point that one of the service parties just needs to go down that schedule and go statewide, local, whatever is the right thing to do it. So that was one point. The other is a Frobisher specific one. We've still got this balcony project on the Major Works programme, and I understand from people who attended the Major Works programme board that that's coming off. Thank you.
Yeah, that's correct. And so, and just on one, it's a really important point, and actually, it's a step change that we're seeing as well in some of the procurement activity that we're doing, because we're being really specific about not just the cost for either the Barbican or a block, but actually breaking things down by asset as well, so that when Frobisher is a great example for the lift nuances that you have with sharing them with the centre, so that is clearly detailed, and I think it should definitely sit with the service charge working party to go through this and do that work.
Yep. I'm on the forecast. So this is page 31. A question relating to the lift refurbishment and modernisation programme, specifically for the terrace blocks, of which obviously Willoughby is one of them. My first question is, where did this number come from? I'm not aware of any survey having been performed.
Yeah, there were surveys performed, and they were all brought back to this committee.
Just
and
recently?
They were probably around 9 months ago. So it was done. This committee approved it. It was ILEX. They came and did an asset survey of every single one. They put a cost against that, and they were sent to all house group chairs as well. So I think, unless anyone tells me otherwise, I think they were sent.
Right. I was asleep at the wheel. I apologise. The other question is, it talks about refurbishment and modernisation. Do we know how much is going to be refurbishment and how much is modernisation?
Yeah, so the two options that were presented were modernisation and full replacement. And just briefly, we went through what full modernisation meant, and essentially it was everything would be replaced except for the frame of the car itself, the metal counterweight, which doesn't expire because it's just a big lump of metal, and there was a third thing, and I'm guides, that was it, guides. Thank you very much, Tam. It was the guides, and that was because the guides that we have in the Barbican are actually better quality because of when they were made than what you can get on the market today. Other than that, everything would be replaced, and that's what we went for in the towers. Now we'll have to, we had that conversation, we set up a working party with the towers. We'll have to have that same level of detail conversation with the people in the terrace blocks, but those are the two options: full capital replacement or major modernisation. That brackets back to guides.
Thank you.
Claire.
Thank you, Claire Hursty, Lambert Jones Muse, or a voice in the darkness at the end. I just wanted to flag that Lambert Jones Muse residents are concerned that the ongoing project with our roofs and the work that's been done and the questions that remain don't get swept up and lost in the wider roofs project, particularly as we've got some costs from the previous project which are still yet to be reconciled and closed out. So I just wanted to flag that.
Thank you, Claire. And I think they will absolutely be kept separate. It's not appropriate for them to be wrapped up in the bulkier projects that are across the estate in that sense. I think the same approach to building envelope will be helpful. But as you say, we're quite a way down the road with Lambert Jones Muse and what we've been doing with the drainage, etc. So we will keep them independent.
Thank you, Chair. James Durkin, appearing this time as Chair of the Gardens Advisory Group. Can I first say thank you for all this documentation? I think it really is very helpful. Secondly, I was looking at page 32, and what caught my attention halfway down page 32 was paving relaying Thomas More Garden. Now, the good news so far is there are no dates on this whatsoever. It clearly is not imminent. But I just wanted to make a point that it is true that some of the paving needs to be relayed, but the underlying problem in that garden is the drainage. That actually the paving stones, particularly on the side along Thomas More, flood repeatedly through the winter months, and unless the drainage is resolved, then relaying the paving stones will not fix the problem. So fortunately this project doesn't appear to be imminent. But when it becomes imminent, can I suggest that we look at what we do about the drains as well as the paving stones? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Absolutely. And having been a casualty of rolling my ankle in that corner on a walk ground, I do appreciate that the drainage and the sinking of that garden, yes, can be inconvenient at times.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 6, report of the reporting committee. This item is for information on pages 37 to 40.
Thank you very much, Reese. So this paper is the report of the reporting committee. This is in line with our commitments of being transparent. What we have done is we've given you a summarised version, and we're working with colleagues at the City of London to get the full agenda packs and minutes published on the website, so that anyone that would like to go and visit and see those on the website, you'll be able to do so. And that just means that we're not clogging this agenda pack with what was, probably 40 to 60 pages for both the reporting committee and the Major Works Programme Board. But we've given you a summary here. I think the two things that we can really focus on will be the governance review, for which there's a separate paper later, so I won't labour on now, and then the organisational chart, for which is an appendix to this, which I'll go into now. The only other thing to say, and I've had this conversation with a few chairs of working parties, is that between us we seem to be, some of us working towards calendar year end quarter dates, and some of us working towards financial year end quarter dates, which has led to some confusion. So just to make members aware that the financial year for service charge, which is the 1st of April to the 31st of March, is what drives our activity, and so we'll be making a step change to ensure that when we refer to quarters, we're referring to the financial year quarters, not calendar years, to try and avoid that confusion. That'll be across everything you see in these papers moving forward. So I'll move on to the organisational chart, which I will flash on the screen here, but is in your packs. There's a bit more colour on my one on the screen than there is in your packs. And so what we have here is something that members have been asking for a very long time. It is an organisational chart of the Barbican Estate Office as it stands today. Behind that, you have literature on what each of the specific departments, so residence services, property services, and the service charge and finance department, are responsible for. We're trying to show the breadth of coverage at the BEO of what these teams are responsible for and the activity that we carry out on a day-to-day basis. And what will sit behind this, which will be delivered in Q1 next year, no, Q4 next year, that's embarrassing, isn't it, will be a communication strategy, and that strategy will link into actually what it means for a resident to have this communication chart in front of you. So who do I contact, or what do I do if I need to report a repair? Who do I contact, or what do I do if I have a finance query, etc., etc. And the ambition with that strategy is that we will reduce the traffic in officer inboxes. We will improve the service that we give to residents in terms of how they interact with us in the first point, and that we will be able to run a lot more in terms of reviewing sort of diagnostics in terms of when things come in, if they're getting lost, if we're not hitting KPIs, SLAs, etc., which will be really important to us. So that second piece will come back in Q4 next year. I'm happy to take any questions that members may have on our organisational chart.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify, when you say Q4 next year, are we talking about January to March 26, or are we talking about January to March 2027?
January to March 2026.
Thank you.
Dave Taylor Gilbert. This is really welcome, Dan. As you said, we've all been waiting for this for a long time. Could you tell us a little bit more about the role of the estate supervisors? And without wishing to preempt your communication strategy, are they people that residents would have any contact with?
So the estate supervisors at the moment are responsible for the people below that box. So the porters in the towers, the car park attendants, and the housekeeping team. Now there is a raft of responsibility that sits behind that, and it's all around obviously staff management. That's a huge piece in terms of sickness, performance, absence management, ensuring staff are motivated, etc. And then there's a sort of standards and service piece there as well. We will be reviewing that in totality with the residence services as a whole. And one of the things that the head of residence services post is designed to bring to us is it's to link that bit between service standards, so the people that are responsible for the staff and delivering the day-to-day service, and the people that then get the traffic. So for example, it would have been in previous iterations the house officers or the property management team, and to ensure that at that level we're able to have one message and be very consistent in our delivery. But I will say that the detail of that would definitely be within that communication strategy.
Pauline.
Hi, Pauline Fasoli, John Tondell. Thanks, Dan, and welcome, Curtis. You're a very welcome addition to see on this chart, which we've been waiting for a very long time. I'm glad we're getting this lines of communication sometime in January to March, but in the interim, what's happened to our house officer, or do we still keep bombarding Luke with our staff?
So I've always, and I said this on Wednesday, and I've said it in iterations of this meeting before, we're taking a step change away from the house officer role, and we're moving to a property management team. This was agreed at a previous BRC when we got this organisational structure approved, and the reason being is that it's always been very difficult for the house officer role in terms of they get all the feedback from the residents, and then they're left in the office, and it's very difficult for them to try and collate that. One of the real key parts of this communication strategy will be that step change and what that looks like for leaseholders. In the meantime, Curtis is here, Luke is here. We would encourage that people, if they're reporting repairs, report it through the repairs desk. That's still the standard protocol. If they have finance queries, they go through Shruti and the finance team. That's the finance protocol. And then if there are things that are resident services based, then you are able to currently speak to Curtis and Luke and even myself. And as I say, once we've wrapped up that communication strategy, that should then all become very clear. But yeah, but Curtis, Luke and myself in the first instance.
I thought I saw Andrew Tong's hand come up. Is it still up or has it gone down?
It's a new one. Thanks.
Thanks.
Dan, thank you for this. I recall quite a few RCC meetings ago, there was a topic that was fed into the RCC via the service level working party regarding developing a number of standard operating procedures. And the example used back then was starting with the procedures for handling smart meters installations. Would that work feed into this? Is that work already done and can be used separately from this evolving communication strategy? Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. They would be two separate streams of work. One is a commitment to deliver a handbook to each block at a block level around specific asbestos instances within cupboards. The other is a broader communication strategy that would be published to all residents and leaseholders to give them almost like a flow chart of if they had this issue, they would go to that person, that team, or this email or this phone number. So they are separate, and I will certainly take the point away around the asbestos handbooks as well, because they haven't come back to this meeting, so I'll make a note on those as well, Andrew.
Any other questions? Stuart.
Stuart Linus from Mountjoy House. I just had a couple of questions about the annual schedule that the reporting committee worked to. And what I wanted to ask is if it would be possible for the report to identify all the items on the annual schedule which are due since the previous RCC meeting, so we can see if there are any reports which haven't been submitted.
Thanks, Stuart.
Make it a lot easier. Secondly, could you keep the annual schedule under constant review so as to drop any completed projects or programmes and include live projects or programmes discussed at the RCC, such as the governance review, in-house repairs and maintenance, restitution, and the resident communication strategy?
Thank you, Stuart. We've got a couple more meetings until the end of the year for the reporting committee, at which point, yeah, absolutely, we can go through that agenda plan. We can bring back a gap analysis to the next RCC meeting if there's anything that we've missed, or indeed if there's anything that we've added on. You know, some things are discussed that are added on, whether they're raised as an agenda item or in any other business as well, which will be complete within the minutes when they're available on the website. But absolutely, I think it's right that this committee can see, you know, the annual agenda plan, what has and hasn't been hit, and I don't think anyone would have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Just to say that the Major Works Programme Board have requested that projects don't fall off until we've had the project completion report.
Fine. Yeah.
Just so that you know that we're going to get those.
Yep.
No other questions? Right.
Moving on to agenda item 7, governance review. This item is for information on pages 41 to 58.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Members, in front of you have a governance review proposal from Charles Russell Speechley, partnering with Inside the Box, who are a management consultant. The rationale there is that Charles Russell Speechley are legal experts. They are going to be setting the legal and regulatory framework for how we should be operating. And then Inside the Box are a housing consultant who are going to review, once we have that embedded legal and regulatory framework, what the best and most efficient suggestions for working are. So the report outlines all of that. This was sent to House Group chairs as well, and we did receive some feedback, and some of that has been incorporated into the table. Again, as part of our early engagement, we're really trying to get things out in the open before we come to these RCC meetings, so that we can have feedback included, so that they don't have to come back and forth. And actually, we got some really good and valuable insights from that, so it was helpful for us as officers as well. And I will just say that members may be aware that there is a review going on within the corporation as well, in terms of its housing governance, and this report is probably aptly timed because it will also go to that working party who's reviewing governance at the corporation as well. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that members may have on the governance review.
Sally, carry
on. So Dan, yes, obviously I've been involved in all these meetings and we've had about it. One of the things I thought was rather strange in your covering report, where you talk about the key features and benefits, is it doesn't make it clear that whatever they call Charles Speechley, are going to have the opportunity to actually recommend a new structure. So it just sounds like they're going to describe the structure. So I just think it's important when you look at your key features and benefits, particularly by the time it gets up to BRC, that it's very clear that their scope covers the opportunity to actually change things. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. Absolutely, it does. They can provide, whatever recommendations they, as the experts, see fit. And so, yeah, that could have been more explicit. So apologies, but yes, it does, and I can give that assurance to members here today.
And Stuart Linus again. Just a simple technical question. The funding source described here is described as city funded. Does that mean that there is no way that the city would seek to recover any such costs through an overhead allocation?
It's funded by the landlord account, so it will be the landlord account that pays for it. So there will be no recovery from service charge.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say that I strongly support this review, which I think should benefit both landlord and tenants. And I'm pleased to see that your team have decided to give a high priority to resident consultation. For residents, I think resident consultation is perhaps the most important and yet possibly confusing aspect of the review. So it's very encouraging to see that in your main report, you clearly advocate consultation with residents, RTAs, and stakeholders during each of the 3 phases of the review, which you described. On the other hand, the proposal from CRS proposed a single consultation period, a rather large one, but nevertheless a single one at the end of phases 1 and 2, with no opportunity to reconsider what may happen during the benchmarking exercise, and indeed to have the benefit of any of the, to miss out on consultation during phases 1 and 2. So,
yeah, I can come back in there, Stuart.
Yes,
I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. So within the feedback that we had from House Group chairs, and indeed at one of the meetings we had at the reporting committee, it was pointed out that it wasn't explicit within the CRS report that engagement would flow through all 3 phases. It is in my report. That feedback came over the last couple of weeks. We have gone back to CRS and they have confirmed that they're happy to have that engagement in phases 1 and 2 as well, and in fact that it is actually vitally important, but we didn't manage to get a reiterated version from them in time for the paper deadline a couple of weeks ago, but I can have that minuted. I've had the conversation with CRS and they are absolutely, for them, the more leaseholder engagement and the more engagement with the stakeholders that are in scope, the more the more accurate the report, and that's really important for everyone.
Thank you. That answers my question. I have one other question, which is about how the programme will be overseen from the residents' point of view, and indeed from your point of view. Sorry. There was a governance, I think, a reference to, sorry. Yes, sorry. Is there a steering group which will oversee the review and liaise with CRS and finally endorse or reject the final report? Is this the representative committee which was referred into in section 2 of the minutes of the reporting committee's October meeting?
What minutes were those?
The October meeting of the reporting committee, somebody mentioned a representative committee.
Okay. I'm not sure on that exact point, but one thing that I can make very clear to this committee is that we have said that all along with this, that there would, the report would be made public in its iterations and would reach everybody, so that everybody can see, what CRS and Inside the Box Housing had come up with. Obviously, the implementation of that will obviously depend on the recommendations that come back and what that looks like, and there will have to be a report that comes back to this committee and the Barbican Residential Committee for that, but I think if I think what the point you're getting at is the fact that who will see this report, and we've been very clear all along that the report will be published to all leaseholders.
Yes, I'm more interested at this point in who will form the whatever the steering group is called.
I'm sorry, I'm unsure as to what steering group you're referring to.
I'm puzzled by this mention of a representative committee, but it seems that you don't recognise.
I think where it says representative committee, it's most likely referring to the RCC and the BRC.
Oh, I see.
I don't think we're not proposing to establish an independent committee for this piece of work.
Well, who will CRS liaise with throughout the review?
Well, they'll liaise with all the stakeholders in scope. So everybody, their point of reference from instruction will obviously be the Barbican Estate Office when we instruct them. But every single stakeholder will be part of that recipients group that will receive the updates from them. So it won't be a case that the BEO get it or the RTAs get it all independent of each other. When the review is ready, it will be circulated to all the stakeholders within scope.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nothing online. Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 8, 2024 to 2025 Barbican Estate Service Charge Actuals. This item is for information on pages 59 to 88.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Members, in front of you is a report of the 24-25 actuals for service charge. You have a consolidated estate report which outlines the underspend of £1.3 million, and then you have a narrative between all the variances over or under across that financial year. And at the back end of the appendix, you then have a consolidated version of the estate accounts, and you then have every single individual block account broken down. I think our explanations within here should hopefully answer a lot of questions that members may have. And I note that apologies, I think our last iteration of an accounts update sought to be informative, but perhaps was too ambitious and actually was more confusing than helpful. So you can see here we've made a step change to go back to basics, get these in a format that everyone knows and understands, and get the 24-25 signed off. So I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Jim.
Yeah, can I draw your attention to page 62? Top of page 62, general repairs. The write-up here says the underspend reflects significant improvements made in contractor management, operational oversight, quality assurance processes, focused efforts on enhancing first-time repairs. When we come to the service level working party report, we might talk about that, but yeah. Tightening works control, embodying strong. Okay, fascinating. I looked at the numbers and I thought, if I was estimating the budget for 1 year, 24-25, I'd start with the actual spend in 23-24 and add inflation. If I look at this, the actual spend in 23-24 was 2,512,000. The actual increase in 24-25 was up 3%, which seems to me like inflation. What you're actually measuring here is a significant overestimate in the budget, rather than any actual evidence of better budgetary control. Now, if you want to look good about this, you can overestimate every budget you put up and then tell us how well you've done controlling the costs. Because that's all that this does. Because there's no evidence we're actually getting more repairs done more effectively or cheaper. All we're saying is the budget was overestimated. You can't call that a saving. You can only acknowledge an overestimate. And if you'd actually estimated the budget for this on actual expenditure plus inflation, you'd have got a much more accurate prediction of what you spent in 24-25.
Can I just remind everyone at this table that the current team did not construct the budget. It was the previous management, and so the spend was actually by this team, but the budget was not constructed by them, and so it's quite tricky to I mean, there's no way of explaining why the budget was what it was, other than what we all saw when we saw the budget estimates last year.
In that case, Sandra, I take the point, but in that case, I'd say if we don't know that on the basis on which the estimate was made, then we can't actually claim that coming in under the estimate was a result of ever so much better management. Because we don't know on the basis on which the budget was constructed.
I'm sorry, Jim, you've misunderstood. Perhaps I didn't explain very well. What I said was that the budget was constructed in the way that we all saw at last year's RCC when we considered it. This team did not construct that budget. So, I mean, that's the only point I'm trying to make, that if the budget was ill-founded, then it was constructed by a different team.
Andy.
This may turn out to be similar to the last question, but it's not meant to be. I'm looking at page 63, and I see two entries, one on electricity and one on heating. And the electricity has gone down by 22% and the heating has gone down by 17%. And presumably they're both reflecting electricity. So I've no idea why they're not both down the same amount. But I would like an explanation of that at some point.
So that will primarily be down to usage, because, for example, the heating and then the landlord electricity, which reflects a wide range of things in the communal areas, they're not always operating at 100%. So therefore, if you have, for example, a lift's out for a long period of time, that's going to be reducing that expenditure cost. So it will be based on the kilowatt hour usage, not necessarily the percentage pound figure.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, Dave Taylor Gilbert again. I take Jim's point. It's a very good one. This paper has to compare the actuals with the estimate because we've paid the estimates already. So this is explaining what's happened to the money that we've already paid out and what will come when it's all washed up. But it is also a good point that actually comparing 1 year's actual with another year's actual is actually really telling you which direction we're moving in, rather than a set of estimates, which by definition, all estimates and budgets are wrong to some extent. So I think it's a good point that Jim makes. My actual question was, how and when are we going to communicate these numbers to individual leaseholders?
Thanks, Dave. Providing the paper is approved at the Barbican Residential Committee in 2 weeks' time, they will then become a finalised set of accounts, and we will then begin the process of actually what that means in terms of leaseholder transactions. They won't be done in time for the December year end, so it's very likely that they'll be in the March billing quarter. But also what we would like to do is people know we're very close now, as some members of the service charge working party will be aware, of finalising the heating liability, which is sitting at around £1 million, which members would have been aware of for a long time. And actually, instead of having a credit and then sending out a supplementary demand, we really want to consolidate these two exercises for the benefit of our leaseholders so that we're not confusing the accounts anymore.
I understand that, and you're right with it. We've discussed that in the Service Charge Working Party. The question really still is out about how we're going to explain all that to individual leaseholders. We haven't had letters for quite some time now giving us any figures on our own flats. The city's website does include, say, 23-24's actuals by flat type, but there's no narrative in those. So there's still part of this missing.
Yeah. We'll get onto that and we'll come back with a definitive date. It will be ASAP. You know, we know that we need to get these out. Specifically when we talk about conveyancing stuff as well, it's causing a bit of a problem and a backlog for Shruti's team. I'm sure it's a nuisance for leaseholders as well. So it will just be, once they're approved by the BRC in a couple of weeks' time, we'll start working on those write-ups ASAP.
Gordon, I can see your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, having just seen the actuals for 23, 24, 24, 25, I'm a bit concerned about being charged now over the last 4-year period for asbestos. We're now up to 30,520. I just wonder if that's going to keep continuing, and what was that money for? The other one was the water tank replacement, which we spent 33,500 in 2019-2020, and then in 21-22 you charged us another 10,000, and I see in 23-24 you charged us another 3,000, 2,994. But for what?
Thanks, Gordon. So on the water tanks, I'm not sure if members will be aware, we have circa 300 water tanks across the estate. So it was true that there was a big piece of work done a few years ago, and that highlighted a number of recommendations, some immediate, some that were not immediate in terms of relining tanks, etc. And some of that has been done over a period of time, so to soften the blow to leaseholders and not have it all done in one go. But there are many water tanks that serve these blocks. It's not just one water tank and then you're done and out the woods for a while. I'd have to go back on the specifics of your ones, which I'm absolutely happy to do, but I imagine it will be for various activities across a number of those tanks, not just the same work on one tank. And with regards to asbestos, we're governed to do asbestos management plans by the Health and Safety Executive. We do those and we keep those updated. And when we do those and we do our visible walk rounds with our contractors, sometimes there can be movement in things. Sometimes we need to act something that was previously not labelled as an action to do because of various reasons now might become an action, and therefore we have to deal with those as and when they arise. But Gordon, on the specific points with yours, I'm happy to grab the detail of the last 3 charges for you.
Oh, great, and I'll write you on that separately. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter.
back to electricity. I notice the comments about power purchase agreement, and I know there's been, so in this one I wasn't asleep at the wheel. I know there've been a lot of conversations about the power purchase agreement. I see that there's a reference here that the BEO and energy colleagues from the city are going to provide a full and detailed breakdown of the PPA mechanics, over and above what has already been shared with us all. What is this going to achieve?
I think it will just achieve clarity for members to understand the charging metrics behind that agreement. People have asked us for a lot more detail. I still think not everyone is clear around the unit rate of electricity that we pay, for example, commercial versus residential, what that means, the fact that as a landlord we get a VAT exemption, therefore having a commercial rate isn't always, having a residential rate isn't always better off because we had that VAT exemption, coupled with the power purchase agreement. So there's quite a lot of things to unpack. It won't do anything materially other than seek to help inform residents and members about the agreement in more detail.
On the actual service charges?
None at all.
Thank you.
And just for members' benefit as well, one of the things that was discussed at the Service Charge Working Party, which we will be doing in future, rather than budgeting our electricity and our heating budgets as a whole piece, we will show members the anticipated expenditure for electricity and then the anticipated credits for the power purchase agreement. And that's a really important step change because it highlights what the leaseholder's actual liability is against the perceived, anticipated credits against the power purchase agreement. And what that will do is if there is any ever problems with the agreement, it means that we're demonstrating the baseline of electricity cost to leaseholders, not just lumping it all together. So it gives you a bit more visibility.
Andy.
Hi, Andy from Breton House. Yeah, it's a question around costs for technology and contact centre spend. I think we've seen some numbers that show that that some of those numbers are quite high. Appreciate some of that might be due to technology rollout or something, but it'd be interesting to know some of the drivers for that. But particularly on the contact centre as well, some of the information seen seems to imply that if you divide the kind of fixed cost of the contact centre by the number of incoming calls from Barbican residents, you end up with a number that's like in the hundreds of pounds per call handled. So, I mean, is that a number that you'd recognise, or do you want to add any transparency or colour to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think it's much more a sort of hardware and systems cost rather than like a call handling per breakdown. So in 24-25, we did quite a lot in terms of technology rollout for staff to make sure that people had access to all the right stuff. And I think if we wanted to get a bit more of a breakdown on that, we can. I know, for example, there was a mobile phone rollout for a lot of our colleagues that didn't have up-to-date mobile phones, etc. So there was a lot that went behind that, and a lot of that was really important in terms of staff being connected to the City of London. So, for example, CPAs, etc., having access to all the appropriate tools, training, networks, etc., as well as hardware like computers, etc., that were outdated and needs to be updated as well. So, yeah, I take your point. It is, especially in that year, it's quite a lump sum, and we can certainly flush out a bit more of a breakdown. But it is all that hardware. SIM cards, licensing, all that sort of infrastructure. It's not necessarily it's not divided by the amount of calls, and that's roughly £100 a call, etc.
Pauline.
Pauline John Trundle. This is a quick one. It just jumped out at me when I walked through it. Window charging. I know it's not a great expense, however, John Trundle, ours is, the estimate is up 50%. I compared it to Breton because that's very similar to our block. John Trundle's similar. They've got fewer flats than we have. And this is going up 20%, as going up 50%. And then I thought, oh, well, I'll have a look at the tower. And it's going down 67%. Why?
So this is all to do with the apportionment of the services, and previously this contract has been a statewide contract, and it's been a fixed fee and a portion that way. When we've gone out to tender this time round, as I said, the step change to the PPM regime, we've asked them to give specific block by block costs, and those are the block by block costs that we've received from the contractors.
How can they be so different?
I think it's to do with the mechanics of the contract previously set up, and so I think that's why you're seeing some large variances between blocks. We've had a couple of questions on it already. I think we're happy to go away and bring a paper back on it. But as I say, I think it's the previous contract was a whole figure and then divvied up by the estate, whereas this time round we've asked the window cleaners to apportion exactly what they're doing at what block, what time, and what cost. So it's an individual block cost, and that's where you're seeing the swings. I think the big number is not too dissimilar, but I think what you're seeing is you have sort of the winners and losers in the mechanisms. We're happy to bring a paper back on it. I do take your point that it jumps out on you, but that's why it's the previous contract mechanism.
David Lawrence, Lauderdale. There was a suggestion that the arrangement on the terrace blocks with individual partitions meant the workers took a longer time to get through the whole block, whereas Lauderdale would just sweep up and down the balcony because each balcony is completely open. Maybe a factor.
And again, I think it's all to do with the mechanisms of the contract, how it was initially set up, how those portions have been then divided. That's what the right thing to do, and the thing that we're doing in this moment in time is asking the contractor, John Trundle is John Trundle, so give us a quote for that. Lauderdale is Lauderdale, so give us a quote for that. We shouldn't be doing these exercises where the BEO is rationalising an estate-wide cost and apportioning it themselves, when clearly with something like window cleaning, there is an ability to ask the contractor to do that in their tender documents.
Thank you, Chair. Page 67, Andrews House service charges. When you write to the residents of Andrews House with the details of 2024-25 expenditure, might be helpful if you could explain the charge of 124,991 for internal redecoration in 24-25 in a year when we didn't actually have any internal redecoration.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
I fear my eagle-eyed residents may notice this and wonder what is going on.
Thanks, Jim. And that is, an unfortunate mechanism of when we talk about the non-annually recurring works in the cover paper, and it's simply a case that that work was budgeted at a previous point in time. We didn't spend it, and so it was given back in the previous iteration of service charge accounts, and therefore it appears as an overspend against no budget this year. That is explained in the non-annually recurring work section, but I do take your point. Absolutely, when we come to Andrews, we're going to have to pinpoint when it was billed in the estimates, when it was classed as an underspend in previous years, and why it's appeared as charged now.
So, spend so much money.
Apologies, Jim, your microphone. Yep.
Residents might also be aggrieved about the quality of the internal redecoration, given the cost.
Thank you. And we have agreed to bring a paper back on that is already been formulated by Shruti and Will down the far end. We committed to doing that wash-up paper. The bones of it are there now, and it's a big piece of work for us to do. To unpick that, I don't think anyone on this side of the table would say that it was the best run project, but it's our job to unpick that and deal with it now, and we are doing that, and we have committed to do that.
Yes, so I just wanted to follow up, Townpol asset maintenance. I just wanted to follow up on the window cleaning point. I think in that paper, Dan, it would be helpful to have some specific narrative about the reasons for the discrepancies between those blocks, particularly where it's blocks that may on the face of it appear similar or similar size, similar nature terrace, and exactly what the discrepancy is that's driven that, because it could be that there's a genuine reason. It could be that the contractor's made some mistake estimating, and therefore actually we shouldn't be paying that much for John Trundle, for example.
Yeah, we can do that, Sam. That's a good point. Thank you.
Dan, I'm sort of formulating this question in my head. It relates to those terrace blocks where you cannot read your meter. You have to get somebody from BEO to come and read the meter. I'm assuming throughout the estate, the majority of residents are now able to read their meter, so they don't have to call you guys out. For those blocks where we have to call you guys out, is that at service chargeable cost to us?
So all activities from the PSOs are logged, so we have the records of that. I would suggest that where possible, they would try and combine those with things that they were doing around the estate on the day, because it is such a minimal piece of time. But generally speaking, all the time that officers spend booked to certain areas or certain things is booked and recorded in that way and charged appropriately. I would say electric readings are probably at the minutiae end of that. And to be honest with you, sat here today, I don't know if we book that separately, but I can check. But generally speaking, everything is booked and allocated to the appropriate houses when any officer, whether they're a PSO who do the meter readings, or whether it's a cleaner who changes a shift, or even when they come away, for example, and we've had people going and assisting with bulk waste, etc. That comes back and is booked as a couple of hours as a credit to the block that they're not then cleaning for a few hours.
I'm aware it was £1 a meter reading a year or two back.
Okay, so multiply that by 145 by 4.
Or by 12, because some people get them done monthly.
I have it monthly. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sorry. Just on that point, I didn't hear too well what you said there, Joe, so maybe I've got this wrong. But the person who reads my meter is a person who was the chief engineer. And I've always thought that seemed a rather expensive way of having a meter read. But you say it's just £1 that's charged.
A few years ago, the figures I saw was it was £1 a meter reading. I think at one point they got Metwins to do it. And that was why we were being charged specifically.
Right. So now the reading, how does the chief engineer charge it, or whoever he is? He's not the chief engineer anymore. But
I think that's what we're saying. We'll take it away as an action point for the tracker and come back and let you know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 9, Director of Property and Estate Management Report. This item is for information on pages 89 to 92.
Thank you, Town Clerk. In this report, I don't plan to go over the things that we've discussed already, but there are two things that I would really like to bring to members' attention. One is our commitment to doing a service charge apportionment review to ensure that the contributions are reflecting delivery across the estate. We've had things over the past few years, such as Frobisher Crescent, Flat A, Andrews House, etc., come in. So it's always good to just ensure that our apportionments are correct and driving what they should be in terms of service charges, so we're committing to doing that next year. And the second thing is the building safety cases for the 3 towers. So members of this committee are aware that we were called in by the building safety regulator in October last year. September last year. We submitted in October, and that was for our 3 towers, Lauderdale, Shakespeare and Cromwell. We submitted those within the statutory time frame. And then we heard nothing until around about April time. In April, we were asked to provide some supplementary information with a 7-day statutory deadline, which we achieved. And then we didn't hear anything for a few more months. And then indeed, we had a request in September for a couple more supplementary bits of information and a very detailed call with the building safety regulator and our case handler there. That call was predominantly very positive, and they gave us some really helpful guidance and information. And we are now awaiting their verdict on whether we get a building assessment certificate or not. This will be our last chance to provide supplementary feedback, so we will either get a yes, you've got it, or no, you haven't. And just so members are aware, obviously we've been doing contingency planning in case we don't, and if we don't, it means that we will be invited to apply again, but from the beginning of the process, and it means that we'll have to put a poster up, much like some of our planning colleagues have, if anyone's doing works in their apartment, to say that we applied for it and we didn't get it and we're in the process of applying for it again. Obviously we hope that we don't get there, but members need to be aware that that is the risk. Just to make members aware, 78% of colleagues across the industry who have applied for these certificates have not been successful. So we're very we're very happy with our submissions. We've done all we can to make sure that they are comprehensive and accurate, and the regulator has given us some good indicators, but we will wait and see what comes back from them. We don't have any timescales. We haven't been given any timescales, but as soon as we're aware, obviously we will make members of this.
Sorry, but we seem to be indulging in service charge questions. Is that a landlord cost?
Yes, so the works associated to date, which include the consultants we've had and the invoices we've had from the regulator themselves, are a landlord cost.
Any other questions? No, thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 10, outstanding actions. This item is for information on pages 93 to 98 and pages 19 to 22 of the supplementary agenda.
Thank you, Town Clerk. I had a couple of points to make to members of the committee. Point 14 marks as closed, but doesn't give an explanation. Apologies for that. The explanation is that the variation is between the specific condition of the lifts at the time of the asset review and the fact that the goods lifts are obviously slightly more expensive within the towers than the other lifts. That might translate to a slightly different cost when we go out to the tender, but at the point of inspection, there were some slight nuances. I'd invite members, I think they were all in previous packs. When you go down the RAG rating, you can see some of the differences on each of the lifts as well. Item number 17, progress on heating study, just to say that that's moving forward quite nicely. We still have room for volunteers if anyone would like to volunteer, and we're happy to open that up to any houses now. And we have our building information models coming on quite nicely. I've seen a 3D version of one of them. They look incredibly cool, but more importantly, they're going to perform a very valuable function for us, which is to actually give us the data on if we were to do X option, this is the impact in terms of cost, in terms of heating, in terms of capital project, etc. I've then got 26, 27 and 28 were proposed closed at the last meeting. 29 was touched upon earlier around the cupboards at the fire door project. And I think other than the terrace block lifts, that paper has been deferred to the next meeting, just because of the work that we've been dealing with Chigwell and Elkins, but that will come back to the next meeting. I'm very pleased to say actually that Will and Owen have been having some great meetings and conversations with representatives from the Lift Tower Group, which has been really positive, and our ambition is to emulate that as soon as we're ready to for the terrace blocks as well. So you'll have the same opportunities to engage as a group. And I think with that, I will be quiet and let members ask questions, which is...
This is an item which was in the minutes of the last meeting, but I'm not clear that it's actually made its way into the action tracker. And that's about the issue of the annual audit of service charges. My understanding that is now a statutory requirement. I wondered if you could clarify for me when that statutory requirement became effective, or has it become effective yet? Are we in compliance with our statutory requirement, and what is actually happening to drive forward the audit of our service charges? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So on that, we had a meeting of a subgroup of the Service Charge Working Party, and we have got together terms of reference for the audit. Now, in that meeting, we were thrashing out what exactly the requirement is in terms of there are obviously different types of audits and different scopes, and the audit that we're going to do for the first set of accounts is going to be a full comprehensive audit, and then we might look to doing sample audits that meet the requirement in future. There are members here that may want to speak to that a bit later, but absolutely, I will have to just jot down and come back to you on the exact dates it came into effect. It escapes me off the top of my head, but absolutely we'll make sure it features on the next action tracker, and I can assure you that it was discussed around 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the terms of reference are imminent to be approved by the Social Working Party and then brought here. Oh yes, and it is. Yeah, it is on 40 service charge audit. It is on 40 as well. Thanks, Jim.
Morning.
Sorry, me again. Action tracker 4, the ASB. I just wanted to know, is graffiti included in that?
Yes, graffiti will be included in the ASB plans that we bring forward. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm referring to item 30, which was about the 2026 to 27 budget being moved, responsibility for looking at that being moved from the Service Charges Working Party to the Reporting Committee. And against progress, the suggestion is proposed closed. But I have some questions about that. For residents, the annual budget is one of the most important issues of the year because it decides our service charges. And the original question in September was whether the reporting committee should now take over the scrutiny of the 26-27 service charge budget from the Service Charges Working Party. The reporting committee met on the 10th of September and agreed that the budget should be reviewed by the Service Charges Working Party and the reporting committee together. So it's now proposed that we close the issue. But I think that the point has been missed and the underlying problem here has not been resolved. Up to now, the annual service charges budget was scrutinised by the Service Charges Working Party, which is a team of well-informed residents and chaired by a resident. It is thus capable of critiquing the annual budget, and its chair writes reports directly to the RCC. The reporting committee is chaired by Dan, who, as the head of the estate office, proposes the annual budget. So it seems to me odd that Dan should chair the committee which is responsible for scrutinising it.
Just to jump in there, Stuart, thank you for that. And we've had this conversation at length about not just this particular topic, but me being the chair of that committee, full stop, and it's been discussed at the committee. And what we said the course of action was to have it in scope for the governance review and ensure that it was looked at then. I have no burning desire to be the chair of that group, and if it is found that it should be a resident chair, an independent chair, I'm not going to preempt what may come back. I will gladly step aside and become a member of that group, not a chair. And just to say that we did agree that the Service Charge Working Party and Reporting Committee would jointly review the 26-27 budget. That is still happening. The meeting was scheduled for today. It was unfortunately deferred, but it's all members of the Reporting Committee and the Service Charge Working Party. And a big part of that as well is continuity. But if an independent report comes back and says that it's not appropriate for me to be chair for the reasons you've stated, you have my assurance I will gladly step aside. I think to do anything in the interim when we've got this review hopefully being commissioned in 2 weeks, I think we've only got 1 or 2 meetings left, and it will probably be paperwork.
Okay, yes. I mean, I was just going to go on to say that make the point about the upcoming governance review, so we're in agreement on that. Thank you.
Stuart. Appreciate that.
Few points on this. Item 5 is about the Barbican app. Last April, I think, was one date muted, and on this particular tracker, it doesn't give a date. It says commit shortly. At the meeting at St Giles the other night, you mentioned April 26. Is that still the target?
We're hoping it's sooner than that. I think I said that probably out of caution to this committee. So just so everyone is aware, Curtis has picked up this project and work stream Curtis has actually worked previously with the provider as well, and is picking up all of the back end stuff that we need to do, along with other members of my team as well. Those conversations are going really well, and we're obviously very keen to get this off the ground, especially because it needs to link in with our communication strategy and our ambition to bring repairs in-house and be able to provide better data to residents. So it's absolutely our commitment. I'm not going to give an exact date here at this meeting, because I'd be foolish to, because I was definitely ambitious in my previous targets, and obviously a lot of stuff has happened since then, but absolutely it's something that will be here. I can only apologise for its delay so far, but I still believe it will be integral to the way we move forward.
And just one more point, was point 8 with regards to repair invoices. It says we can apply to on an ad hoc basis. Who do I address?
Yeah, so for the repairs, you can address them to Shruti, and you can copy in a colleague of ours, Ian, as well, who's on the sheet, and they'll be able to address your finance queries in terms of specific invoices.
I have one point on action 22. The answer didn't really address the question, which was talking about the principles behind the repairs and the publication of those.
Absolutely, Chair, and we'll pick that up offline. Members will be aware that we went through this in some detail, and there were 2 additions that the committee agreed to. We just need to publicise those to leaseholders and make sure that that's ticked off. So we can arrange that hopefully this week between ourselves, Chair, and get that message sent out.
Any other questions? Can I suggest that in addition to the items that have been proposed closed in the actions list, item 17, which is the heating study, where the action was to see if you wanted volunteers, and you say you have sufficient but could always deal with more. Action 20, which was about the commitment to include putting the minutes on the website, the reporting committee minutes on the website, and 21, which was specifically about some of the wording of the terms of reference of the governance review, which has been updated. So are we happy that all those are closed, and the ones where it says proposed closed in the pack? Great, thank you very much.
Moving on to agenda item 11, working party updates. The first is Garden Advisory Group.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm very happy to take questions from anyone. I'd just like to emphasise what a great job I think the gardeners do in keeping the gardens looking as good as they do in very difficult circumstances. A very dry and then very hot summer could have wreaked havoc, but actually the gardens have come through and are really looking pretty good. I'm aware that from the action tracker, there is still a point I'm pursuing with the city gardens about the placement of the trees on Speed Lawn, but I'll continue to pursue that. That's fine. Finally, on this, just want to welcome Curtis. I don't know if Curtis is aware of this, but Dan assured me before your arrival that you will then become our point of contact for gardens. So I'm assuming that's what we're doing, and I will make sure you're told about our next round of inspections, and if you can make any or all of them, we will be delighted to see you. It is a good opportunity to talk to some of the most engaged residents about their questions and concerns with the gardens. So I think you would find it valuable, and I'm sure that we would. So anyway, welcome to the Barbican, and we look forward to working with you.
Andy.
Not a question, but just a quick congratulations actually to the Barbican Wildlife Garden and all the people that were involved with that as well. So I think for the 8th year in a row they've won the coveted London in Bloom Award. So you're winning so much, you must be getting tired of winning. So
Then we have the Service Level Agreement Working Party.
Me again. Thank you, Chair. I find the Service Level Agreement working, the report, it is a bit of a curate's egg this month. Let me start with the positives. Absolutely delighted at the work that Luke and others put in to providing KPI data for the first 6 months of the calendar year. Let me be clear. So we saw reports from January through to June, and I'm aware that requires a lot of staff input, and very appreciative of the work. Also very appreciative of the fact that Dan, who I know is very busy, found the time to join the working party for its deliberations, knowing the pressure on his time. That was very well received by us all. I think the difficulty is in what's then in the data, because what's in the data really isn't very great. I mean, there are two bits. One, we were somewhat disappointed we didn't get the data for the July to September quarter. I know we met in October and it was quite tight, but it would have been helpful because otherwise the numbers are increasingly out of date before we get to review them. But you know, hopefully we will get there with that. Other than that, we did try to lay this out as clearly as we can. There has been a significant deterioration recorded in the timeliness of repairs. Only 24% of urgent repairs were being dealt with within 24 hours. I'm not being funny, but if you're a resident or a leaseholder who's got an urgent repair, that's poor. You might say, well, we smashed it on all other repairs. I mean, you know, we weren't too good immediately. Well, actually, no, that was down to 65% completion within 20 days. 65% completion within 20 days. I know there's an awful lot going on, and I'm aware there's an awful lot of planning for the future, and there's a real attempt to get hold of this. But can I just emphasize from a resident point of view, we need to be dealing with the reactive repairs which are now in place. If we're not, all the capital expenditure programmes don't really cut it, because the experience, the lived experience of people on the estate is repairs just don't get done in time, and that's not acceptable. You can see a similar pattern with complaints. The proportion of complaints being dealt with in time is not great. I know that it's more complicated because in some cases the deadline for complaints can be pushed back by mutual agreement with the complainant, but there aren't that many complaints. I would really think that perhaps we could actually make the targets on those. And then lifts. I don't know. Lifts have increasingly appear to be a big feature of my life without my trying. Well, that really is because we are running into increasing problems about lifts being out of order, and out of order for prolonged periods. For anyone who fortunately was missed out on the correspondence, let me just explain. There was a lift in Defoe, which is a staircase block, which was out of order for over 10 weeks. Fortunately, the person who lived on that staircase and used a wheelchair had, shortly before the lift outage, moved to another flat. But 10 weeks without a lift, when you're elderly or when you're young and you have children or anything else, it's unacceptable. Now, I know I will be told these lifts are elderly, that they require specially made parts and all the rest of it. I hear that. What I don't hear, and what I didn't hear from the residents who talked to me about it, was a consistent pattern of communication, explaining where they were up to and what was going on. I didn't hear engagement with residents to say, look, if this is a real problem, contact us and we will help. We will find a way of dealing with your shopping or your suitcases or whatever. Thinking it's out for 10 weeks. We need to do more than occasionally notify one or two residents of where we're up to. And if we're right about the fact that lifts are getting they are getting older, and if the problems of spare parts are going to get worse, this isn't a problem which is going to go away. It's a problem which is likely to get worse. Now, I know that Dan and his team have come up with an idea of accelerating the replacement of several lifts, including several which are in working order, so that they can then be cannibalised and provide spare parts to avoid future outages. I thought that was a good piece of lateral thinking. It was warmly welcomed by the working party. So it's not as if we think nothing is happening, right? We are aware that officers are working very hard with this, but nonetheless, the outcome from a resident point of view is unacceptable. Delighted when Dan told us about the plans for his own, Curtis's involvement, other people's involvement in block by block inspections, and of course next year. I think it's a great step forward. Delighted to hear it. But can I emphasise, all houses are supposed to be notified when the 6-week inspections are taking place and be invited to take part. As far as I can gather, the inviting to take part bit has not been happening. It needs to happen. Okay, if the houses choose not to accompany you, fine. They can't say that they weren't asked. But if they weren't asked, that just creates another set of problems. So I would absolutely urge, and I think Curtis, this comes under you now. I know this is not your fault historically because you've only just arrived, right? I get it. But I would say we need action to make sure the houses are invited to attend the 6 weekly block inspections, right? I think it's really important. And then finally, another positive note, I think, was the data which we saw. I don't know that it came through in the report, but if anyone wants to see it, I'm happy to share my copy, which showed spend by contractor. And I thought that was a really positive step forward because it allowed us to see the changing pattern of what was going on across the estate and how different things become priorities at different times. I thought that was very helpful, and thank the officers involved. So I think at that point I'm going to stop and open it up to any questions, but I would like to emphasise we understand how hard officers are working on this. We are appreciative of the data. We are appreciative of Dan's making the time to attend the meeting, right? So it's not that we don't get that. I have to say, from a service level point of view, this is a depressing report. Thank you, Chair.
So thank you, Jim. Just to say thank you, Jim. And obviously, I was at the meeting, and I think I could list many things and many nuanced things around why some of these things are happening and what we're doing, etc. But in the interest of time, I will just say that officers are working very hard. We agree that improvement is needed. That's why we're doing some of these big pieces of work and step change. We're not going to sit here and say otherwise. I think there is a bit more detail behind why some of these numbers look like why they do. But ultimately, you're right, and that's why we're putting some of these work streams in place to ensure that we improve that moving forward.
For the record, can I just check? You suggested it was 65% of the non-urgent ones. I can't actually see that. Your report seems to say 84.5%. I think, or no, P2 combined 80.9%. Sorry.
Apologies, your microphone, Jim.
Yeah. I wouldn't like to leave a 65% in the minutes if it's 80.9. I agree that it still should be better, but yeah, thank you.
Next is the climate.
Sorry, we've got David.
Yeah, just a quick question on the block inspections. I've done an awful lot of them over the years with Luke Barton when he was our house officer. I'm not clear from this note or from what Dan actually said in St Giles last week, who is actually carrying out these 6 weekly inspections?
So we're going to be coming out in 2026 with a schedule for every house on who's going to be doing it and when. what we don't want, and what I was alluding to in previous conversations here and at St Giles, is I don't think it's fair for one person to be doing those every 6 weeks. I think you need fresh eyes. I think you need different departments, and I think you need people looking at it through different lenses. That includes myself, that includes Curtis's team, it includes Owen's team, and therefore we need to put together a proper schedule for every house to ensure that they're plugged in through the year with house chairs. So we will be coming out with that to house chairs in the near future. But as I say, it won't be one person. It's not fair that it's one person, and actually everyone will get more out of being around the estate, seeing these blocks and being able to do those inspections.
I agree. That'd be very helpful for the houses. Yeah.
I just have one question on the says the process for handling complaints continues to be managed by the team in DCCS. One is that cross-charged, and two, should that not show on the organisation chart we saw earlier in the meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. It should show as a little asterisk on the organisational chart the same way as the repairs desk does. We do have a dedicated team that deal with complaints across housing in the Barbican. They deal with complaints in the sense of that they come into the complaints team, they track them, they acknowledge them, and they ensure that officers respond accordingly. The investigating officers tend to be primarily officers in the BEO, and occasionally it might go up to, say, a Judith level if it's an expedited complaint on a stage 2. And I believe that there is a cross charge for that, and I will come back to the service charge working party and the service level working agreement party to outline exactly what that is. I believe it is minimal in terms of it being an administrative function, and comparative to our colleagues in housing, we are a small proportion of that, but I will commit to bringing that back to both committees, subgroups, sorry.
Any other questions?
Members, as per Standing Order 39, do you agree to extend the meeting for 15 minutes? Yep, thank you. Move to the climate, sorry. Apologies. All right. The Climate and Zero Carbon Working Party.
Thank you. You can imagine how pleased I was to find that the Barbican Association had independently come to the conclusion that one of the future-proofing priorities would be reducing energy consumption and taking carbon net zero into account. So Sandra kindly spotted that, so we approached them immediately, and they agreed to. Richard Sechin has agreed to become interim chair of the work of the RCC Climate and Zero Carbon Working Party, and their volunteers are joining that working party as well. We've approached the old volunteers, or in the process of approaching the old volunteers, to find out if they are interested. And the first meeting is tomorrow, which is great. So the only thing I think we need to do is invite Richard to future meetings as chair of the working party. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Moving on to the Service Charge Working Party.
Thank you. I think this report speaks for itself. We've had 3 meetings to look at the 24-25 outturn. It was a lot of work from Dan's team, Shruti in particular, done a fantastic job. And we've had 3 meetings, and I'd like to thank all my colleagues who attended the meeting for the hard work and being prepared to keep coming to more and more and more meetings. I think probably the Service Charge Working Party is the working party that meets most frequently, and we need to meet pretty frequently over short periods of time to deal with particular issues on the budgets. We also had a meeting on the 15th of October on the heating bills, and we should have had a meeting today to have the first discussion on the 26-27 budget. That's been deferred. We're waiting to hear when it is going to be rearranged. Dan says 2 or 3 weeks. And that's to look at the 26-27 service charge and the second phase of the outstanding issue on overhead recharges, which you'll recall is still a big issue that we're waiting to have resolved. The only other thing is that, as we said, the item 4, it says a detailed review of the internal and external redecoration contracts and their delivery is being undertaken by the Estate Office. I think that came up earlier, and I just wanted to underline that we have discussed that. And also the remit for the audit, which a subgroup of the working party have been having talks with Dan about. 6 month actuals for this year, 25-26, will be produced by the end of this year, and all groups have now had the repairs and maintenance data that was outstanding. We're optimistic that we will shortly get a paper on the issue of flat numbers being on reports. Thank you.
Any questions for Sandra?
Next, we have the Asset Management Working Party. However, I'm not aware of any updates. Is there anything? Dan?
Yes, sorry, that's on me that we haven't met in the last period. I do need to get another meeting in because we've transferred most stuff to Major Works now, and I need to get a final meeting to tie that up. So that's an action on me that I'll pick up in the next period.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 12, questions on matters relating to the work of the committee. No questions have been received in advance this meeting. Do members have any questions? Jim?
Chair, just one. I wondered if the dates for the RCC meetings for next year were available yet, because it really would make life easier for some of us if we could plan around the dates for next year. Thank you.
We're trying hard. I had a wonderful plan to have them evenly spread out through the year, but that's being thwarted a little, I think, by the fact that we would need to change the BRC meet date as well. So we're in discussions with the Town Clerk's Department as to what's possible, and if it's not possible next year, then we'll do it in 2027 instead. Yes. Yeah, as soon as we know.
No further questions. Item 13, any other business that the chair considers urgent?
Hi, Andy Breton. Perhaps it might have been in Major Works actually, but it's related to the pump costs for the lakes. I think there's been a historic convention around how those costs should be apportioned. So actually, that could have been Section 9 either as well. But is it true that the Barbican Centre is challenging the costs for those pump works, and that they've requested a meeting to discuss what the apportionment will be, and if there is going to be a meeting around that, who's going to be present?
So we have had a meeting with the Barbican Centre around the pumps. It wasn't specifically centred around the pump cost. It was more around the logistics of pump equipment throughout the Barbican Centre renewal project. And of course, if there are any suggestions of material changes to cost allocations, then they would need to come through this committee, through the BRC, through the Barbican Centre board, etc. But that was much more around, is there an opportunity to make the infrastructure for those tanks more accessible for the people that actually need to use them, so that repairs can be more timely, more cost effective for whoever's paying them, etc. But of course, if there are any notions on cost allocations changing, they would have to come through a raft of committees before anything was agreed.
Thanks.
I think Andrew online.
Andrew Tom.
Thank you. Apology in advance to those in the room. My questions are largely due to the missing audio in the beginning of the meeting. If I can just ask the chair to confirm whether during the session reviewing the minutes, the proposed addition that Warside raised, whether that has been included. I think Dan mentioned something.
Yes. Yes, it has been included. I've sent you the wording in an email So if you can confirm afterwards that you're happy with that wording, that will be great.
Yeah, belatedly, I've also replied with an amended version.
Okay.
If we can take that version.
Okay, we'll
please.
take that one
We can
offline.
consider that one, yeah.
Yeah.
And secondly, there was a very small edit that we emailed to the town clerk ahead of meeting, whether that can be taken into consideration.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that. A very small.
A small edit that I emailed to town clerk.
I'm not aware as of yet. One sec, Andrew.
Mm.
Perhaps we can take that one offline as well.
Sure.
Happy to take it offline,
Sorry,
Andrew.
you have an agreed set of minutes that was agreed at the start of the meeting. It's not possible to, unless it's a minor type of, and so this is the question, if it's a minor typographical error, I think it's reasonable to take that offline. I don't know, and neither does Reese as clerk, whether that small change, maybe small to someone, might actually have quite a significant impact to the rest of the members of this room. So whilst I'm supportive of the general principle, it's quite challenging for us to agree to do that without further information, I'm afraid.
Well, those due to specific technical circumstances today, that we'll have to do this in an awkward way. But yeah, it's if Barbara can take it into consideration. Lastly, again, whether that was covered, regarding the topic, the roof and balcony renewal program in the last LCC meeting, the following BRC made a very important change. Whether Dan has given this committee an update.
Andrew, I think it was in the report. In fact, it was in the report of the Major Works Programme Board. I didn't specifically speak to it, but I can draw members' attention to it now. Andrew's referring to the fact that within the Major Works Programme Board, we removed Brandon Muse Canopy from the architectural-led work and only left the 3 blocks in that. That's 4. Sorry, yes. But yes, that has been removed, Andrew, and it's minuted in the report of the Major Works Programme Board if you would like to go and have a quick review.
Great, thank you.
Found the email. It's fine.
Much more complicated.
Okay. Any other business? Thank you.
Thank you.